Hello people, welcome to Waking Mad, where we courageously explore human existence. This is your host RJO and Ben Bruce, and we're here conducting an interview with Robert Bruce.
Yes, hello people. We're really excited at Waking Mad because this is, as you know, all about exploring the greater nature of reality through the Consciousness Project, Philosophy of Consciousness.
That's right.
Otherwise known as ontology, cosmology. We could call it the ontology-cosmology nexus. It's the theory of being and the theory of the universe.
Yeah.
And what is the nature of the subjective-objective interface? But we'll get to that a bit later.
Yeah, that's right.
This is an exciting day because it is New Year's Day. It's the 1st of January 2016. And what better way to spend New Year's Day than to engage in our favourite topic, which is philosophy. Which, as you all know already, this is the love of the goddess Sophia. The ancient Greeks thought that anyway. And Sophia is the goddess of wisdom. So we love wisdom. We love exploring the nature of consciousness and reality. And we have our first guest on Waking Mad today. And this is our father, Robert Bruce. Welcome, Robert Bruce.
Hello.
Now, just to introduce Robert Bruce, he is the author, I think he's a best-selling author, of the seminal treatise on out-of-body experience, aptly titled Astral Dynamics. He's also written several other books, the Practical Psychic Self-Defense Handbook, as well as another work entitled Energy Work, and a corollary to his first book, Mastering Astral Projection.
Which I co-authored with Brian Mercer.
With Brian Mercer. And this has been a labour of love for this man, as I know. I've been there at different parts on the journey and watched him write and do all kinds of conferences and workshops all over the world. And there is actually a conference coming up in this part of the world, in Melbourne, January 29th to 31st this year, 2016, and it's the Australian Afterlife Explorers Conference, which just sounds like something you want to sink your teeth into. So the nature of the afterlife, the nature of life, therefore, because how could you understand life without afterlife? And
well, that's right.
What happens after death? What happens before death?
Yeah, it's
what
important.
is the nature of consciousness?
It's important to everybody.
Very important topic.
And
I mean, a lot of people have death anxiety, existential anxiety.
Well, fear-based.
What's the meaning of life? What am I doing with my life? To have an understanding of the nature of reality insofar as we are incarnating here. I know some people are atheistic, or they don't believe in anything after this material body dies. But to be honest with you, the statistical research shows about 90% of people believe in a higher being. So, I don't know. 90%, that's a big number.
And what a great venue or event for, because we're going. We're going
to be there. We're going to be interviewing
lots of people,
authors and conference presenters, which we're really looking forward to.
And what a great place to interview and explore philosophy on such a great concept.
Absolutely. So, welcome again. And one of the greatest achievements, if I may say, is your discovery or exploration of out-of-body experience, with particular reference to the mind split effect. And I just thought, if we can get the ball rolling, if you could tell us, please, how you came across this phenomena and your theory to explain it of the mind split effect. Because that has a huge reference to the nature of consciousness, I think, wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Oh, it's amazing.
And the afterlife, it applies to the afterlife as well. I started having astral projections before the age of 4, when I was a little boy. And I've had thousands and thousands of astral projections. Now, when I got into my mid-20s, I started to explore astral projection by doing a lot of it, But my intuition was guiding me here to what I would need later to write the book. I hadn't even thought about writing a book at that stage. That was something that happened around 1997, 98.
So you were a practitioner before you were an author?
Oh, well and truly. So the research I did was just for me. And what I did was I observed myself having astral projections, which means by being mindful of what is happening inside my body and to my chakras, my energy centers and that, everything that's happening as I'm leaving my body. And then on the reverse, as I was coming back into my body, I'd observe what was happening and what I was feeling, what parts of my energy body were active and in what way. And I did this exhaustively over and over and over again for years. This was like my main interest. And now I found it very easy to get out of my body, and I was doing experiments in my physical body and while I was out of body to try and understand it better. And one of the big questions I had was, why, if it is so easy to come out of my body, don't I remember all of my astral projections? Because I'll do one like every night, every day, and I might remember 2 a week, and some of them I don't remember at all, even though I know I had them. Because I went through the process, everything worked well, I felt myself coming out, and then stopped, nothing happened. And then one day I was doing some energy work in my evening session.
How old were you, by the way?
At this time I was about 30 years old at the time.
And I understand that you've been having out-of-body experiences much earlier than that.
Since the age of 4, as I've mentioned earlier.
So 26 years to get to this
point?
point?
At the time, at that point.
Yeah.
And this was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I started having an astral projection. I'd done a lot of energy work. I was really powered up, and I made a smooth, easy exit out of my body. Well, I started to. All the vibrations came, the chakra activity, the falling, everything which tells me I'm having an astral projection, and then it stopped. Which happens sometimes, and I never knew why. Everything is going perfectly. I'm completely calm, powered up, and it would just stop. Now, I'm in a chair like this, and I'm meditating, in a deep altered state while I'm doing this. Now, so at this particular time I did that, I thought, well, that didn't work out, so I'll continue with some energy work, and I gained astral sight where I could see the room around me through my closed eyes, even behind me. And so I started experimenting with that, looking behind me and seeing what I could do with this sight. And now, another part of me, at the same time, what happened, that's not going to work, the explanation, this is tricky. While I'm exploring astral sight and looking around the room, I noticed a man come through the roof and into the room at the far side of the room. And I looked at him, and it was me. And this is very interesting. And I saw myself come into the room and walk up to me and stand several feet away from me. And then I connected with myself, and the memories of what really happened flowed both ways. Now then I remembered a smooth exit out of body, going up onto the roof, playing on the roof in the rain and doing a few experiments. And after several minutes of doing that, I decided to come down into the room and experiment with my physical body in proximity reactions, like I get within 10 feet of me. How did it feel? How can I interact with my body, and what can I discover? So that part of me that's why I came back into the room from the roof, and it was raining at the time, and I saw myself, and then I realized that there were 2 aspects of me functioning simultaneously. Now, this is where I realized my mind split. My astral body that came out, we call it the astral body there, is a projection of my consciousness, an energy projection. It's like me, I have never left my body, ever. But I generate an energy copy of myself, and the energy copy is what is projected out of body, or projects out of body there. And that has a simultaneous existence independent on its own, where it gathers experience memories independently. So here I am in the chair, looking at myself, looking at me from the other side of the room, and I have both sets of these memories side by side. It was quite, a head flip at the time, to put it mildly, trying to hold on to this coherently, but I had it and it was there. And it was very, very clear to me after this. And of course, once I had the scent on this, I started repeating this experiment night after night, understanding what was happening. And it was very, very clear to me there was only one explanation, and that is I coined the term the mind split effect, where when you astral project out of your body, you project an energy copy. The real you, your mind, your memories, your soul, call it what you like, your spirit, never leaves your physical body while it still lives. With a possible temporary exception of a person who has actually physically died and been resuscitated. That's not a near-death experience, that is actual death experience where you've been resuscitated. I mean, coming close to death won't really do that, on rare occasions.
So we could argue, if we're going to talk about the impact of the mind split effect phenomena on our understanding of consciousness, is that any after-death experience, for example, like you mentioned, the near-death experience cases, may be a generated copy of consciousness, some kind of uploading of conscious content from the physical brain, or the consciousness that at least is associated with the physical brain uploads into some kind of a separate storage device, which we might call a spirit or something like that.
Well, scientifically it has not been proven that memories are stored within the physical brain. I mean, one of my best friends is a brain surgeon, lives in Hawaii, Dr. Jack, and he, you know, I've talked to him about this. He said they've never identified where in the brain you store your memories. Because, he said, one good example of that, he said experiments have been done with rats, where you teach a rat to go through a maze, certain tricks, and then you remove a small segment of its brain. And then you have another rat and you train for the same thing, remove another segment of the brain. And you do this over like 100 different rats until you have removed the entire brain. Every part you can remove without killing it, that is. And all of the rats remember the same puzzle. The memories are obviously not stored in any particular bit. And another example of that is an operation called a hemispherectomy, where 50% of the brain, one complete hemisphere, is surgically removed. Now, it doesn't matter which side of the brain you remove, no memories are affected. So, you know, you could say, yeah, maybe they're stored in both hemispheres of the brain, but the brain is kind of like not a backup ward, but it does something. And then you have cases where people, human beings, don't have a brain per se. They have a head which is full of fluid with about enough brain tissue about the size of the average rat's brain. A very, very small amount of tissue. And this is caused by a childhood disorder, a babyhood disorder there, of overpressuring of the fluid in the brain, which crushes the brain down to basically just enough brain stem to cover, just enough brain matter to cover the brain stem. But some of the people who are identified with this condition, one of them I know was a math honours student in university. I mean, very intelligent, no loss of memory, no nothing. So you have to understand the scientists don't know where the memories are stored. I think, and a lot of other people do too, they are stored in an energy field, you could say, around the body. You could call it the energy field, the aura, whatever you like, but it is stored in a non-physical form.
Well, just to add to some validity to that, if we look at patterns of dualities, where all things have an opposite, and we think that, okay, we have a physical form, it wouldn't be so far-fetched to think that we also have an opposite, a duality to the corporeal with an ethereal or a spiritual body. And I think we've explored this concept in one of our earlier podcasts, where as the body and the flesh grows, so too does the spiritual body grow alongside it, developing its own senses that we sometimes, depending on who you are, connect to in and out.
And you can expand these senses through spiritual training. Example, the astral sight, you know, hearing spirit, seeing spirit, sensing spirit, feeling and knowing the psychic abilities and that. And beyond this, you can try, it becomes obvious to me when you get right into this, in actually doing it there, and you feel like alien. You feel like this vast being with this incredible intelligence, scope and abilities, which are definitely not physical.
I think one of the things that we really experience, and some of this learning needs to be experiential. You need to actually experience it to have any idea what it's about. You can't just use philosophy, in my opinion, to theorise about, say, I don't know, England. Far better to go there and check it out. Similarly with altered states of consciousness like out-of-body experience or the vibrational energy state or the mind split effect, if you experience it, if you're fortunate enough to actually apply various methodologies, and I do understand there are various methodologies to achieve these altered states of consciousness and then experience this phenomena, it's, you can't go back from that. You fundamentally altered, you fundamentally changed, you've been through it. Then you have to basically embody the ramifications of that feat.
Well, that's the thing. You need a marriage between experience and theory, because if you just have the experience, you don't know what that is. You'll just say, I don't know, it's just a feeling, right? But if you have the theory applied to the experience, you have knowledge, you have understanding, and you can move on and progress with that.
And this is what's interesting about what you were saying earlier, that you were having these experiences as a child, and I think you've also said prior that we all have out-of-body experiences. Is that right?
I believe, and my personal experience shows me, that every human being, every animal on this planet astral projects every time they sleep. I have observed, because over many, many years of meditating and astral projecting, I often have animals in the room with me, or my dog or my cat or both, and I'm often sitting there with full astral sight. I can clearly see the room around me through my closed eyes, and I often observe my dog or my cat. It's like a pale, glowing, smoky figure rises up out of them in the shape of the dog or the cat, and then move around. And often when I come out of my body, and if I'm doing real-time exploring in my local area, as I go out into my garden, my cat and my dog, or my cats even, come with me. And they will follow me just like they would do if we had a real walk in real life. And so it's very, very clear to me that all animals astral project.
So it seems to be an artifact of consciousness. Consciousness just does this.
It's a natural artifact of consciousness.
It's happening naturally, and yet we have a memory problem, right? The major issue,
because
I think you said before, is we don't remember it.
Yeah, the point about that, good point, Ben. The issue with why, remember I was saying, I would astral project, 7 days a week there, but I'll be lucky to remember 2 or 3 of them. I know I'm having some that don't. But if you look at what happens here, I'm continuing to exist in my physical body. Even though I'm in a deep altered state and I've got an astral projection in process, which is recording experience memories independently. I'm awake in my physical body, doing energy work, meditating, experimenting. I'm recording my experience memories independently. There's 2 separate mind streams, 2 separate sets of memory being recorded simultaneously, like 2 tracks on a stereo. At the same time, at some point, usually a few minutes after your physical body falls asleep, and that's what, when you go into an altered state, your physical body goes to sleep. Now, at some point after that, usually a few minutes or so, your dream mind becomes active, which is a function of the mental body. And so now, the typical mind split, there's 1, 2, 3 copies of you functioning, recording 3 completely different memory streams simultaneously. Now, when you physically wake up again and you reintegrate these aspects of you, how does your mind, your brain handle 3 completely separate memory streams?
Just to recap that,
it doesn't handle it.
The physical consciousness memory, the
your
dream memory or mental body you mentioned, we'll get to that in a minute, but the dream mental experience, and then the astral projected,
the astral double
or copy,
you'll call it. Yeah, your astral projection.
So we're seeing a triplicate.
Yeah.
And they're simultaneously recording memory streams, and yet you're saying you can't actually have all three experienced at once.
Well, if you look at
you switch between them, do you, as a dominant mode of memory recording?
That is one way that can happen there. Any memories you have after an astral projection experience like that may contain components of you sitting there in your chair or laying there in bed there. You remember being awake, and when you have an astral projection in process, you will feel paralysed. You can't move, not even blink. But you will usually be able to see the room around you. Even though you may be laying on your side with your head in the corner, you can see the room around you because you have 360-degree vision with astral sight. It doesn't rely on the eyes.
And you know, we often talk about this just in regular sleep science or understanding of the brain or consciousness. I mean, when you think about it, what is a dream? You know, a dream is... Let's come from a materialist paradigm for a minute. We're going to have to partition our paradigms here. But a dream is a hallucination. It's some kind of internally generated world which isn't actually there in the physical dimension. I know we're going to run into problems with that paradigm in a minute, but that's cool. We're going to demarcate that and look at the anatomy of paradigms, basically.
That's true enough. What you say is true.
Yeah.
But you have this condition related to falling asleep, which is paralysis. So, you know, and that makes sense because if we're having a dream and your body is confused as to whether it's real or a dream situation, we could be sleepwalking. And indeed, some people do sleepwalking or sleep thrashing or sleep talking. And some people can walk out into oncoming traffic and all sorts of dangerous things. So you can see it's an evolutionary adaptation to inhibit motor neurons from the base of the brainstem to paralyze the body during sleep. Whilst this alternative experience, let's call it, is occurring. And so sometimes people wake up and that paralysis state is still occurring, isn't it? And we call that waking paralysis. So you're awake.
Typically, what happens there, people wake up randomly. It's because a truck goes by, somebody honks a horn, or cell phone goes off in another room, which arouses you just enough to capture the memory download of what's been happening.
So you capture the memory download and you also cannot move your body. And that's why waking paralysis, isn't it the case, is like a sign that something like that's going on.
Well, can you just imagine...
Now, there are exceptions to this, but that's generally what happens.
You just imagine, I mean, imagine being in 2 modes or 3 modes or 3 bodies at once. Imagine the chaos. And maybe this is
imagine the
madness.
waking madness.
Well, the chaos is what happens at the end of that is you imagine your poor old mind trying to deal with these 3 memory streams and trying to keep in order. Now, most of the time, probably 99% of the time, the memories, these separate memory streams together, they get thrown in the too hard basket because this is just not going to fit. But occasionally, you will get little segments, a bit in your physical body, a bit from being out of your body, maybe floating through your garden or your local town, and you'll get a bit of being in a completely different reality from a dream reality. And these are stacked together like film clips being thrown together at random in no particular order, and it doesn't make any sense. But if you examine what is happening, it actually does make sense. More rarely, you will find a person will wake up in just the right way that they download the memory of, say, one of them, the astral projection, and then they remember the start and finish of an actual astral projection.
Because you also have some people who remember, like let's say they're sleepwalking, and they remember them doing the action, but when they wake up, like they remember themselves sleepwalking, but when they wake up, they think it's a dream.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying here is that when you wake up and you recall a dream, right, it might not necessarily be a dream, but a compilation of your corporeal, your dream, and your OBE, just mixed in, stitched together like a film, and the end result is a compilation of all these different modes.
There's another problem with here, which relates to the mind screen, the mind split effect. There is the duration of an astral projection. The longer you have an astral projection going and a dream state going at the same time, as soon as you have an astral projection, even though you're in an altered state of consciousness, which means your physical body is asleep, it's like it's stage 1, 2 level sleep, will instantly start dive bombing into deeper and deeper layers of sleep, which is what happens. Now, at that time, other aspects of you on higher dimensional levels start becoming active. And after 30 minutes or so, you can actually record it when they start reaching delta level sleep, deep dreamless sleep there. You're at the point there where the memories would be totally incoherent. They don't mean anything. You can't process them, so you can't recall those sorts of memories.
Now, I'm sorry to interject, but we have been talking for quite some time, and I'm quite aware of attention spans in the contemporary world. So we might need to pick some of this up in part 2, which we're going to be doing straight after this. But would you like to potentially wrap this up into a conclusion or summary statement about what you were just saying then? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, the basics here is that once you have an astral projection in process, your physical body mind starts falling into deeper levels of consciousness. Now, most people, when they get into a deep level of sleep, an alarm clock and a bit of a shaking has trouble waking them up. So the subtle sensations involved with the returning astral body, if your astral body is, say, trying to come back and keep the astral projection short, are not enough to cause arousal in the physical body to start waking it up. Keep in mind, in closing, your physical body must be in the process of falling asleep in order to have an astral projection going. The reverse applies in that your physical body mind needs to be in the process of waking up in order for your astral body to get back in again. Now, if that doesn't happen, you take more than a few minutes over an astral projection there, your body mind slides into a deep level of, like coma level of consciousness, and you can't get back until the morning where everything's gone. The memories, most of them are gone. You won't remember anything. And that here is the difficulty in learning astral projection. It's actually very easy to learn, a few minutes instruction and a bit of practice, and you'll be out. But
which I think would be good to get to in part 2, to actually go through some of the dynamics and mechanics of how to induce these states of consciousness, because I think that the more people that we have in the world able to practice these encounters with altered states of consciousness, the more that I think people are going to be far more awake and in touch with the true nature of not only reality but themselves as a conscious being. So I think that that's a really excellent point of departure, and it was wonderful to hear your rendering of the mind split effect, and even better that you were able to capture it and actually write upon it in terms of the mind split theory. Any parting comments, Jess?
No, it's fantastic. A brilliant way to start off the year from the man who's built his from experiences from the ground up and is able to share it with us. Stay tuned for the next part of this interview.